secret on the channel that Mortal Kombat is easily my favourite game series ever created. There is just no other series that comes close to the same kind of excitement I get when a new Mortal Kombat is announced or the days leading up to its release. To me, Mortal Kombat is the ultimate fighting series. Iconic and phenomenally designed characters, amazing stages, incredibly detailed and rich lore. Wait, I feel like I'm forgetting, oh yeah, of course, the fatalities. So let me take you on a journey through over 30 years of Mortal Kombat as we play every single game in the series, from the original back in 1992 all up until last year's latest release. I'm going to be summing up what makes each game different and unique, what I like and dislike about every entry, and how well each hold up before crowning the best and the worst Mortal Kombat experience right at the end. So folks, grab a drink, grab a snack, because we are going to be talking about MK4 for quite a while. So without further ado, let's just get into it as we go to play every single Mortal Kombat game, well, ever released. Let's begin. Our journey, of course, starts with the release of the original Mortal Kombat in August 1992. There is genuinely no way I could put into words what this game did for the fighting genre and gaming as a whole. In fact, I'm sure you are all aware of the many controversies made by this ambitious and deadly new fighting game.
A horrifying possibility for parents who can't believe the game makers are fantasizing about decapitation and murder.
I don't think they'll have this at home, no.
So,
A little bit
you
too
look
violent.
a little startled.
Yeah, it's a little too violent, I think.
It is a sick, disgusting video game, in my judgment. Shame on people that produce that trash. It's child abuse, in my judgment.
Now, it may be hard to understand why by today's standards, but it really was that big of a deal back then. As I said, though, we're all more than aware of the controversy, so let's just get into the gameplay. So, with it being the first, as you can imagine, this is the most bare-bones Mortal Kombat experience somebody can have. But it's not a bad thing at all. The original Mortal Kombat revolves around a tournament. The evil sorcerer Shang Tsung is trying to claim Earth by winning 10 Mortal Kombat tournaments, and in the past they have already won 9, meaning that if they win this final bout, Shang will be able to claim Earth and destroy it by merging it with his own realm. So it is up to Raiden, the god of thunder and protector of Earthrealm, to put a team of combatants together strong enough to be able to thwart Shang Tsung and to stop this deadly merger from ever happening. A simple premise, but it sets up everything we're about to see perfectly. The original Mortal Kombat comes with a roster of just 7 combatants. The cocky actor Johnny Cage, Black Dragon leader Kano, God of Thunder Raiden, the Chosen Champion Liu Kang, the Spectre Scorpion, Stone Cold Sub-Zero, and Special Forces Sonya Blade. A very decent roster for 1992, with each character having their own lore, backstory, and feuds. Of course, the gameplay is again basic here, as every character shares the core set of moves. So their punches, their kicks, and their throws. But that's why each character comes with a couple of special moves that make them truly unique. Liu Kang's iconic flying kick, Scorpion's spear, and Raiden's, well, whatever this is. In terms of the gameplay loop, again, quite simple, and just as you climb a ladder going from fight to fight until you reach the top and beat the evil sorcerer Shang Tsung. But there is a surprising amount of content here, even just for an arcade ladder. The first 7 fights are 1v1s throughout the entire roster, fighting everybody once. Then you reach the endurance levels, and these definitely ramp up the difficulty, as you have to fight 2 characters back to back with the same health bar, and yes, it's just as painful as you might think. After those 3 endurance fights, you will then face the undefeated 8-foot Shogun Prince Goro, a sub-boss that didn't get the email that he was only a sub-boss, as he is an absolute tank, and you are going to die to this guy a lot more than you think you will, as his insane power and complete aggression means he will just delete your health bar with only a couple of attacks. And somehow, if you manage to get past all of that, as I said, that is when you face the shape-shifting Shang Tsung, and he is also ridiculously difficult. All he does is spam skulls that absolutely shred your health, or becomes other fighters to spam things as well. And truly do not underestimate this crumbly old man. But once you get past the spamming and the morphing, congratulations, you are the champion of Mortal Kombat. The game ends on a small screen saying what happened to your character of choice after the win, and these are fine as well. These ladders for me were always just painful. I struggle with the basic 1v1s already, but as soon as you reach the endurance challenges, God, this is where I got humbled. I love the idea on paper, but they are a considerable difficulty spike that comes out of nowhere. And looking back, I don't think the difficulty works in today's climate, but it does make sense for a title originally made for arcade machines. The fighting arenas, of course, are also worth mentioning as well, as they are all fantastic. A glimpse into a world that we know very little about. Goro's Lair, the Pit, the Warrior Shrine, the Throne Room, all of these locations would become staples to the series. And just like the characters, they're very well put together, varied, and just help connect the world. Yes, fair enough, it's just a stage, but they are just as important as every other aspect in a fighting game. And here they are done just as well as the rest. Fights are the only thing you'll be tested on in this game, as your might shall also be tested. Was that a good segue? Well, never mind, we're here now. Test Your Might is also featured in this game for the first time as a wonderful palate cleanser in between the carnage. Here you harness your power and use it to break a bit of wood or coal or diamond by mashing buttons until you fill the bar. It's a fine minigame, sure, but nothing really to scream home about either, just a nice little break between the fights. But now, of course, it's time to talk about the fatalities, the biggest focal point on this game and the entire series to come. In all of the fighting games, if you punch a character in the throat enough times, they'll just go down defeated. But not here. Win against your opponent and you'll have the chance to enter a special input and revel as your character of choice violently kills their opponent in a glorious, gory spectacle. Alright, I may have gone a bit poetic on that, but it truly was the first of its kind, and that's why people adored it. Fatalities became the most important aspect of the entire game, and you can see why. From Kano ripping out their still-beating heart, Raiden exploding their head with lightning, or Scorpion revealing a skull before incinerating them on the spot. They all were, and still are, fantastic. Yes, fair enough, they are incredibly tame by today's standards, but that doesn't matter, as remember, this came out in 1992, and for the time, they are brilliant, with these fatalities alone putting Mortal Kombat on the map. If I had to sum up Mortal Kombat in a single word, I think I'd go for charming. You're not going to be spending all of your time here. Like me, you're probably just going to put a couple of hours into it before it starts to get a little bit mundane. But it doesn't stop those 2 or 3 hours being absolutely fantastic and a wonderful visit back in history. The only thing is, with this being the original, it is without question the most dated Mortal Kombat experience a player can have. It's not a bad thing, but it just doesn't hold up compared to any of the other games in the list. So for now, Mortal Kombat gets the #1 spot because obviously it's the first game we've covered. So with Mortal Kombat being a massive hit instantly, it didn't take long at all for people to get hungry for a sequel. With Midway knowing this, they got to work, and just a year later, the next entry in the series was ready to release. Exactly 1 year after the first, the world was blessed with Mortal Kombat 2. And it's clear Midway knew exactly what people wanted from a sequel, and that's what they gave us. Better graphics, more characters, stages, secrets, and of course, most importantly, better fatalities. So let's unpack this, starting with the roster. With 7 playable characters in the last game, MK2 is a considerable improvement already, with 12 playable characters, old and new. Returning from the last are Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, and Johnny Cage. Sonya and Kano didn't make the cut this time around, as they were both the least played characters in the original, but they do technically return as background characters for one of the stages, which is pretty cool. Mortal Kombat 2, however, brings a collection of new characters to the roster. Firstly, a now young and playable Shang Tsung, which is a nice surprise. Reptile also debuts and is playable for the first time, and the entirely brand new characters consist of Princess Kitana, her horrific clone Melina, Liu Kang's new bestie Kung Lao, Sonya's Special Forces colleague Jax, and the fierce Tarkatan monster Baraka. This, honestly, is a fantastic roster and introduces so many of the most iconic characters to the franchise. Story-wise, things are quite similar to the last game. Mortal Kombat 2 begins immediately after the events of the last game. Shang Tsung has just lost the tournament to Liu Kang, resetting the tournament counter back down to 0. With his tail between his legs, Shang Tsung returns to his master, the new big bad of the game, Shao Kahn. And Shao Kahn gives him one last chance to prove himself, now having lost the chance to merge with Earthrealm. Their idea? One last tournament. No more first to 10 rubbish. One tournament to decide the fate of Earthrealm and the merger. If Shao Kahn wins, that means Earth is his, but if he doesn't, he will abandon his right to it forever. And again, another very simple premise to the game, but one that sets up one of the best characters in the entire series. Mr. Khan. With the story and new characters discussed, I think it's best to talk about the actual gameplay. And folks, I'm happy to report that this is a considerable improvement over the last entry. Not only are the graphics much nicer this time around, but the fighting and the mechanics play much smoother as well. Movement feels great and hitboxes seem to have been fine-tuned, making you feel more in control of your character. The pace is also a little bit faster than Mortal Kombat 1, making it seem a touch slow in comparison. So another welcome improvement to keeping the blood and the gore as often as possible. The game itself, however, plays identically to the previous. Pick your character of choice and then go through a ladder facing the various Noticeably missing though from the ladder this time around are any of the minigames like Test Your Might. Don't know why they were removed, but I imagine it was to provide more space for new characters and the new implementations, which is fair enough. In regards to the sub-boss for these ladders, Ashokan returns, but it's not Goro. Kintaro smashes his way onto the screen, and he is just as annoying in all of the same ways as Goro was. A tiger print variant that loves to just jump on top of your head and completely wipe your health bar. He's fine, but he's no Goro. As I said, Kintaro is again another very difficult sub-boss, but he pales in comparison to the big bad of the game, the Emperor of Outworld, Shao Kahn. Holy Jesus, did they make this guy tough. Not only in his appearance, as yeah, he looks incredibly intimidating, but that's matched perfectly with his hilariously broken and difficult moveset. His hammer and shoulder charge are more than enough to paste you into absolutely nothing, and send you right back to the start of the ladder, where you belong, you filthy bitch. Even though it's just as difficult as the last game, I would say that it's more acceptable here, and losing constantly doesn't feel as painful, as it's not a frail old man handing you your spine, it's roids on roids. Shao Kahn being an absolute tank is obvious, so it makes sense. So I do think the final boss is much stronger this time around as well. Eventually, when you come out victorious, Shao Kahn turns to stone and explodes for all to see. As was the case with the last game, when you win, you're told of what your chosen hero did after the Mortal Kombat 2 tournament. Again, great as it just gives each character a little more depth. In regards to the actual fighting, it's just as basic as the last game, with every character sharing the core moveset and only being unique with their special abilities. But this time around, the average has risen. Instead of each character having maybe 2 or 3 special moves, most come with at least 4 or 5 as the bare minimum, which again was another step in the right direction. The arenas again are all brilliant and give us a collection of new and old locations that are all infamous in their own way. It's just another great collection of places to beat your opponents into stuffing. Now, there is one thing I must say about Mortal Kombat 2 as well. I don't know who made it this way, but the game is psychopathically difficult from the get-go. Every single fight will feel like a final boss here, and it's honestly exhausting as it's clear that the CPU just reads your input and then perfectly counters your attack every single damn time. I can't stress enough how difficult this game is. It may sound harsh and dramatic, but if you've played Mortal Kombat 2, you know. That just leaves us the fatalities, and honestly folks, Midway knew this was one of, if not the most important aspects of the sequel, and good God they didn't disappoint the second time around. Not only do all characters now come with 2 fatalities as base instead of just the one, but they also get better, gorier, and more creative. Exactly what they needed to be. Midway decided not to end it there though. Stage fatalities are also heavily improved in MK2. Now there was a stage fatality in the last game, but it was only for the pit level, so I didn't think it worth mentioning up until now. Whereas here in Mortal Kombat 2 there are now several maps on this game dedicated to helping you kill your opponents. And I think Deadpool's is the best, because of course it is. Killing your opponents has never been more satisfying, and just remember folks that all of these improvements came in just under a year. That is mental to me. It is no secret that Mortal Kombat 2 is obviously much better than the first. They refined everything wonderfully and gave fans exactly what they wanted, which is exactly why Mortal Kombat 2 is now the #1 spot on the list. It didn't take long for demand for a third game to go through the roof, as fans wanted more characters, more arenas, more blood, more story, more fatalities, so Midway got to work again. But they took a little bit more time with this one, and just over 2 years later in 1995, the year I was born, the true Mortal Kombat 3 was ready. Now, before we get into it, I need to quickly talk about this game. So, technically, the first Mortal Kombat 3 released in April, and it was met to a lot of criticism. Several expected characters were removed, such as Scorpion, Raiden, and Johnny Cage, for seemingly no reason, and this just didn't sit right with the fans. This wasn't the only reason, of course, but I do think it was the biggest. So, 6 months later, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 released, and this is the version I'll be talking to about today. It's also worth noting that the PS1 released with its own version of Mortal Kombat 3 called old MK trilogy, which for lack of a better word stapled all three arcade games together for a console release, whilst changing a couple of things and adding some mechanics like aggression. I played all of the versions, but as I said, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 is the one that I'm going to be talking about. So with that, let's continue. First, of course, we need to talk about the roster. 7 playable characters in Mortal Kombat 1, 12 in Mortal Kombat 2, and a whopping 22 in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Every past character returning except for 2. Now added to the roster are the ketchup and mustard flavoured cyborg warriors Sector and Cyrax, as well as Smoke from the last game. Entirely new this time around is the Native American tribe leader Nightwolf, Kitana's mum and Scream Queen Sindel, Bent Speedster Cabal, the first playable Shao Kahn character with Queen Shiva, and yeah, Striker's here as well, but who gives a smeg about him really? It's also worth noting that classic Sub-Zero, Melina and Ermac are all playable in Mortal Kombat 3 also. You just have to unlock them first, which is a new for the series as well. The tone for Mortal Kombat 3, as you can no doubt tell, is also a lot darker than the previous games, and this reflects the story quite nicely. After his defeat to Liu Kang in the last game, Shao Kahn then decides, sod it, I'm just going to invade. Thanks to the revival and corruption of Queen Sindel, Kitana's mum and Shao Kahn's forced bride. With her power, he is now able to set foot on Earthrealm and attack them proper. So for one last time, Raiden and his team must thwart Shao Kahn to make sure that he can never claim Earthrealm, which is exactly why this game feels a little bit grittier and a lot darker. Gameplay also takes an incredible step up as well though. For the first time in the series, combos actually exist. Each character, like before, has access to the same collection of shared controls and of course their own unique list of special moves. But this time around, each character also comes equipped with pre-made dial or combo inputs, making sure that you can take a considerable chunk of health off your opponent if you're quick enough with the input. And this mechanic just further cemented that Mortal Kombat knew exactly how to trim the fat and give players more of exactly what they wanted. The ladder, of course, returns again with the same premises as before: climb to the top and smite down Shao Kahn. Now, test your might may still be missing, but Mortal Kombat 3 revived another feature from the first game. As before the sub-boss, you are now faced with another endurance fight. The 2v1 is back, but unlike the first game, which saw you face 3 endurance fights, Mortal Kombat 3 only has the one, which is again another great development. Moving on past that, we then deal with the sub-boss as well. And for Mortal Kombat 3, we have our next original concept, Motaro the Centaur. A clever name, if maybe a bit on the nose, but he is still your run-of-the-mill sub-boss. A gigantic tank of a creature that can demolish your health with headbutts or his mechanic tail laser. Motaro is certainly another creative addition to the sub-boss roster. However, for me, he is the weakest so far. I think I just love the Shao Kahn race too much, and Goro is one of my favourite characters. So Motaro just felt a little bit underwhelming, which I know doesn't sound fair, but it's just the truth at least. Not saying he's a bad character at all, far from it, but I do think he's the weakest of the 3. The final boss, of course, is the great Shao Kahn once again, and honestly, he pretty much plays identically to his last rendition. He hits like a bastard and will mock you openly in between spamming you with insane shoulder barges and new hammer attacks, with his hammer becoming iconic for the character going forward. But the same as before, best him in Mortal Kombat and then he will absolutely bleed. Oh well, maybe just explode off screen? Yeah, I didn't like that at all. The effect of his death is great, but the fact that we don't see anything to me was a huge letdown. With your victory, of course, Shao Kahn is no more and your chosen character gets another ending describing what happens. Once again though, folks, it's time to talk about the finishers. Returning this time are the regular fatalities, with each character receiving 2 again. The fatalities are fine in my opinion. They again look the best they ever have, but I can't help but feel like the devs went a little bit too silly with them. Scorpion's Ben and Shiva skinning the opponent alive are great, but Melina spitting a mug full of pins at somebody or Cabal inflating them like a balloon just felt too much for me. But for the most part, they are still a considerable improvement. It's also worth mentioning now that a few years after this release, they did port the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 experience onto the Game Boy Advance, shockingly calling it Mortal Kombat Advanced. And I did also play this as well. It was fine. A bit difficult again, but a decent way to play classic MK on the go. It doesn't really need mentioning, it's just a different port though. It's no question that Mortal Kombat 3 is obviously the greatest of the arcade releases. It has the most characters, the most stages, the best mechanics, the most things to do. It is truly a wonderful experience, even today. And I would recommend Mortal Kombat Kombat 3 easily if you wanted that arcade feeling and experience, but without it getting mundane quite quickly. I enjoyed Mortal Kombat 3 so much, and it is easily the one I would recommend the most so far. So, of course, Mortal Kombat 3 takes the #1 spot for now. Now, the only problem was that this was the worst-selling Mortal Kombat to date, and some fans started to get a little bit bored of the repetitive nature of the games. But with new technology right around the corner, Midway got to work once again, and worked hard to craft the next perfect Mortal Kombat experience. Before that, though, they decided to try and take a risk and make a brand new type of game first for consoles, meant to tide the hungry fans over until the release of Mortal Kombat 4. And for the first time, Mortal Kombat became a platformer. Mortal Kombat Mythologies is a prequel that takes place before the events of the first game. You play as, surprise surprise, Sub-Zero, as you plan to thwart the evil Quan Chi and prevent him from stealing an amulet that would free the fallen evil Elder God Shinnok. Immediately worth noting is that this is the first game in the series to have cutscenes in it, thanks to the console release, meaning that the story and lore technically is the best it's ever been so far, as these cutscenes are actually quite enjoyable, if not a little cheesy.
Amulet. I have Shinnok's amulet.
Whose amulet?
He is my deity, ruler of the Netherrealm, and soon destroyer of your Earthland.
What are you talking about?
With that, we are immediately thrown into the full game, and we start by trying to find a map whilst also in pursuit of Scorpion. Now, gameplay-wise, you move to the left and the right, fighting the occasional baddie that gets in your path, whilst also avoiding certain death traps that really live up to their name. The developers really did want to stress the platforming in this game as well, so that's why you do so much rope climbing and jumping and just basically throwing yourself around the screen, which would be fun if not for the phenomenal timing that you need to make it through any of the levels and any of the death traps. Like, this game is hilariously unforgiving. As far as mechanics go as well, this is the first time in the series that we also gain XP. Gain enough and you can unlock some of Sub-Zero's classic moves and abilities, like his Ice Ball. And his combat works pretty much identically to the previous arcade games, meaning that it's thankfully quickly understood and at least translates well on a surface level. At the end of every level as well, a boss fight presents itself. This gives the game a more classic feeling, and at times can feel like you're playing on the arcade machines. The fights are quite difficult as well, as the NPCs certainly love to spam and do frame-perfect counters. But by picking up health and other items throughout the levels, it certainly helps control the difficulty a bit. It is time to talk about the elephant in the room though, folks. Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero is a horrendously bad game. Yes, the rumours are true. This game is really bad on pretty much every single front. And the reason why I'm mentioning this now is because every single point I'm about to make for the rest of this game isn't exactly in the best light. So with that, let's continue. This game has to be the worst platformer that I've ever played in my entire life. The first thing that I noticed is that the camera is zoomed in a hell of a lot, meaning that you can't look ahead at enemies or death traps, meaning most of the time you'll just get hit or die instantly because you couldn't see what was in front of you. And it makes the game feel incredibly claustrophobic, which was the first thing I noticed. The second, as I previously mentioned, are all of the death traps and obstacles. In the first level alone, 90% of my deaths, if not more, were related to the horrible timing of these stone pillars. It took me nearly 30 minutes to figure out the spacing and the timing just to get past this one hurdle alone, let alone the stupid jumping to different levels mechanic or the absolute nightmare sequence ahead, where you have to jump from these bizarre things. Everything in this game is designed to stress you out and kill you, and it's really effective. But the absolute worst part about this entire game is that it doesn't feel like a Mortal Kombat in the slightest. Other than a couple of characters showing up and a couple of gimmicks, that's pretty much it. Even the boss sections that are meant to be a slight return to the Mortal Kombat form just don't feel right. The spacing's too close, the controls are awkward, and the movesets are ridiculously lacking. So even the bosses just feel like enhanced regular NPCs. And bear in mind that this is just the first level. When we beat Scorpion and move on, that's when we reach the crazy and absolutely awful platforming sections. The timings don't add up, the movement itself is clunky and unresponsive, but I will say that every time I flung myself off, this animation played, and it did make me chuckle quite a little bit, so that's a good thing for the game, I suppose. I'm not gonna lie lie to you folks, I hate this game, and after getting game over in this section 2 or 3 times without being able to move on, I shut this game down and I vowed never to return. The entire game is a miserable experience that is stupidly unfair, unfun, and has very little to do with the franchise that it's associated with. And that's such a shame, because if this did work and was a good game, we already know that it was meant to be the start of an anthology spin-off, which could have been really interesting. But as it stands, I'm glad it never happened. But as I said, Mythology Sub-Zero is easily one of the worst games that I have ever played, let alone a Mortal Kombat game. And we have so much better to get to, so let's just move on, get to the good stuff, and put this at the bottom where it belongs. May it stay there and die. I will say though, the one thing that I did love about this game was the lore and the cinematics though. Being able to see characters like Quan Chi, Scorpion, and even Serena in the flesh and have them be very motivated characters was great to see. And even if you hate the game, spending 15 minutes to go through all of the cutscenes is still more than worth it. So thankfully the game at least has a silver lining. With Mythologies absolutely bombing in every conceivable way, it was amazing to hear that the next true Mortal Kombat was only around the corner. And for the first time in the series, Mortal Kombat had abandoned the models and the sprites that it once knew, and it was time to go 3D. For the sake of argument, for Mortal Kombat 4, I'm going to be exclusively talking about the Gold Edition that came out for the Dreamcast, and has a couple more features than its arcade counterparts. Think of it as the Ultimate Edition. Mortal Kombat 4 is actually quite surprisingly a direct continuation from Mythology Sub-Zero, with the new big bad of the game being the evil Elder God Shinnok. On paper, Shinnok wipes the floor with Shao Kahn on a power level, so this is an extremely ambitious new threat in the Mortal Kombat universe. Mortal Kombat 4's story does pretty much follow the same tropes that we've had throughout the previous games. Instead of Shao Kahn or Shang Tsung trying to be the one to claim Earthrealm though, now it is the evil Elder God Shinnok. And of course a new team of combatants must rally together and stop that from happening. A relatively simple story on the surface, however there is a little bit more detail here, thanks to the return of cutscenes. This time around, however, it's not just a wall of text, it's a full cinematic video. And folks, this already is the highlight of Mortal Kombat 4 to me. I'm sure most of you are aware, but my god, these ending cutscenes are hilarious. A perfect display of 90s cheese and technology limits, but I wouldn't have them any other way.
The battle is finished. Your quest for vengeance is over, Scorpion.
You cannot kill a dead man. You have defeated my physical form, but my soul is eternal. You will pay for the massacre of my clan and family.
The setup for Mortal Kombat 4 is also the exact same that came before, with you choosing your character of choice and then climbing the ladders looking to take out all of the opponents in your way. Unlike any of the previous games though, that's all there is. No special endurance matches, no mini games, just fight after fight until you win. And honestly, it did feel like something was a little bit missing here, but for the most part it does work just as fine as it did in the previous games. Now we need to discuss the roster. Mortal Kombat 4 brings an impressive 20 characters to selection, 13 returning including Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Liu Kang and Katana, to name a few, but 7 brand new fighters hit the screens for the first time. A now playable Quan Chi and Shinnok, God of Wind Fujin, war-obsessed Reiko, Edenian's very own Tanya, as well as Jarek and Kai, but honestly they aren't anything special, with Jarek being a really bad Kano clone. The roster is honestly fine, and we get a good coverage of classic fighters as well as some great new ones. Some of course would become more staples in the franchise within later games. No, not you. Got it. Shoo, get out of here. Finally, it's time to talk about the gameplay, and Midway once again have made some brave new choices and refinements. Firstly, and most obviously, everything's 3D, including the arenas that you fight on, which adds a cool new perspective to the fights. And for the most part, the arenas are all quite good. The fighting, however, is actually very familiar, even though they have completely redefined the combat and combos. Unlike Mortal Kombat 3, where every character had unique combo sets, MK4 mixes this up by giving every character the same strings that do the exact same animations for every single fighter in the roster. And to me, this is a good and a bad thing. I think the combo system has never been better, and I really did enjoy fighting in this game, as it was easier to swap between characters without needing to relearn an entire move moveset. But the big problem with this is now that every character feels the same. Reptile, Shinnok, Fujin, Melina, Raiden all operate and move the same. And it almost felt like I was playing the original again, as they only seem to be truly unique thanks to their special moves. So, a blessing and a curse to me. Also new to Mortal Kombat 4 is the new weapons mechanic. Scattered through the floors of the arenas are different items that you can pick up and use in combat. From skulls to rocks to actual maces, there's plenty to pick. But it's a small system, and for the most part you won't really be using these throughout the gameplay, or at least I didn't anyway. Now the next thing I'm not sure how to talk about, or really what to call it, but it needs mentioning. Mortal Kombat 4 decided to add some of the most hilarious in-game dialogue that I've ever heard. Like when characters get hit, the noises they make and the things that they say are absolutely wild. Here is my favourite example. Excuse me, Shinnok, sorry. Your leg? Hilarious. So after you've beaten your way through the first combatants, you'll eventually reach the sub-boss of this particular ladder. And it's a great thing to be able to say that Prince Goro has returned, and he is as good as he's ever been. Not only is his design one of my favourites in the game, but he is a ton of fun to face. Yes, he is just as difficult as previous games, and he will kill you many, many times. But it doesn't feel as jarring here, and it really was a treat trying to tackle this big behemoth yet again. And it is easily the highlight of the ladder. Moving on to Shinnok as the main boss, I'm really sorry to say, he sucks. In my opinion, he is not a good final boss at all, as he feels just as squishy as every other combatant. He isn't a difficult challenge to fight, so it's quite underwhelming, especially after the struggle through Goro. Then you remember how vicious and powerful Shinnok's supposed to be, and then it just doesn't sit right. To me, he needs the strength and the feel like the bosses from previous games. Make him have armor, hit hard, and know what he's doing, because this version of Shinnok is not a final boss. He's barely a sub-boss here, and I think this is where Midway went wrong in making him a playable character, as from this he needs to be on the same playing field as the rest of the characters, and for a final boss it really doesn't work. For the most part, folks, as well, that's all I can really mention. Mortal Kombat 4 stripped back a lot, but how do the fatalities fare? For the most part, I actually quite like them. Now, Mortal Kombat 4 fatalities have always been regarded as somewhat bad for the series, but quite frankly, I can't fully agree. Some of them are absolutely awful, and there are no doubts about it, but I like the most that I performed or fell victim to. The new 3D spaces made the animations a lot more cinematic, and I loved that. Raiden's is a good example of this, as it offers multiple camera angles, a dramatic animation, and a decent amount of blood. Each character also returns with 2 as well, meaning there are plenty to go through. The only thing that I will say that is a bit bizarre about them are the characters that can suddenly fly, like Reptile and Jarrek's fatalities. But I imagine this was done to give more of a polished cinematic animation, which I don't mind, as I think the rule of cool applies here. Just please don't do it again. And that's it. In terms of different alities, however, unlike the previous games, there are no brutalities, friendship, mercies, animalities, babalities, all of it is gone. And I would have loved to have seen more, but I do understand why they were included. Mortal Kombat 4 for me is a little bit of a mixed bag. To me, they took one step forward and another step backwards. The gameplay choices, the characters, the roster, the arenas are all absolutely fine to me. But I can't help but feel like something's missing from Mortal Kombat 4, as it just doesn't have the same charm as the games that came before it. And I do think that it's a shame that this is the first Mortal Kombat that really doesn't have any Easter eggs or cool references or anything like that. It's very surface level, which is another reason why I think I don't prefer it to the one that came before, which means that Mortal Kombat 4 is going to go below 3. Once again, Midway needed to go back to the drawing board, as Mortal Kombat wasn't thriving like once before. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the end of the bad luck that they seem to be on, as for some bizarre reason, they decided their next Mortal Kombat game was going to be another big risk. And just like before, I really don't think it paid off. That's right, they decided to try something new again, and that comes in the form of Mortal Kombat Special Forces, an ambitious new Mortal Kombat title that changes the format up once again from fighting beat-em-ups to, well, adventure shooting and beat-em-ups. Now, the first thing that I need to mention is actually the opening cutscene where you boot the game up. Phenomenal. Absolutely fantastic. This is one of the few Mortal Kombat games I've never actually played before, and this intro cutscene definitely got me a little bit curious to see where we were going. In terms of the story, it does sound quite Mortal Kombat-y, if that's a word. Mortal Kombat-y. Anyway, Kano and his Black Dragon friends have all escaped from prison, so now it's time for Special Forces Jax's own with the metal arms to stop that and to put them back where they belong. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the game. That is the premise. So let's just get straight to the gameplay and to see why this game was so regarded in not the best light. So we get thrown straight into the action and already have our first member to hunt down. So we begin, and already I was a little skeptical as the first goons run to stop us. Combat for this game actually works somewhat similar to what we had before. A collection of punches and kicks for you to unleash on your enemy with a chance for combos if you hit particular movesets. Fighting is simple enough as there isn't really much to it, but unfortunately this is already the first thing that doesn't feel great. The combat is quite slow and the enemies will constantly block your attacks, I'd say 90% of the time, meaning for me I often just got backed into a corner spamming the same moves until I was lucky enough for them to connect. Enemies also seem to have a hell of a lot of health, so Metal Arm Madman Jax can be swinging on NPCs for minutes at a time, and sometimes even that won't be enough to put a grunt down, which is crazy. Fortunately, this doesn't last long, as within the first level we soon unlock guns, and guns are the other side of combat within this game, and thankfully it is done so much more successfully than the fist side of things. It's simple gameplay wise, press button whilst looking in a certain direction and watch as the enemies just crumble around you. The damage difference between fighting and shooting is also crazy, so once you unlock the guns you'll have pretty much no reason to punch an enemy again, unless you run out of ammo, which hardly ever happens. XP also returns as well in this game, as over the course of the title, Jax will level up and you'll unlock more access to moves, gadgets, and this is done a lot better than Mythologies in my opinion, as what you unlock are the basics. Here you actually get decent upgrades that give you better and more damaging combo strings or health, so it was actually nice to feel like Jax got stronger throughout the game. That's combat sorted, so what about the gameplay loop? Well, for Special Forces you'll be spending most of your time breaking into facilities and working your way from room to room, hopeful to find the Black Dragon boss at the end. And again, this wasn't that much of a problem to me at all. The touch simple, but it supports the game perfectly. The locations are varied and decent to me, at least on the surface level. The only thing I will say is that towards the end of every level you can get quite confused, as it's one of those titles that'll have you go to room A to pick something up that unlocks a box in room C. With that you can now unlock room B that'll give you a key to the other room in room A, and it can get a little bit boring towards the end of the levels when NPCs are dead and most things have been collected. But we need to talk about the boss fights, as I'm sure this is where the game picks up. So for example, let's get to the first, the dangerous and iconic No-Face. Wait, who the hell is that? Wait, are any of these characters No-Face, Tasia, Gemini? Well, yeah, unfortunately this is another big problem for me. The bosses and the characters are nobodies. We have Kano, who we know, Jarek, who we've only just learnt about in MK4 and hate. Oh, and we actually have Tremor here for the first time, and I actually love Tremor, but not in this game. Tremor is important later on. The rest I could not give a smeg about, and you may say that's a bit unfair considering these characters are just being introduced, and that's the problem. This shouldn't have been the game to introduce characters. It should have built up on the lore we already knew and loved from the last games, making this a spin-off actually worth playing to learn our favourite characters in new ways. I'm not saying include no new characters, but only having 3 return from the official Mortal Kombat universe was a very bad call to me. This steers me rather nicely into the main problem of the game, and similar to the last spin-off, it's just not Mortal Kombat. Other than the title and the fact that you play as Jax, there's nothing of MK here. If you swap the name of this game and the character you play as to something else, then you wouldn't question it. And that's again the big flaw with these spin-off titles. They do not portray their own IPs faithfully, and that just makes it really mundane. It is also worth noting that behind the scenes the game went through developmental hell, so there were a lot of problems, so it wasn't going to be the best game. And for what it's worth, I don't think this is the worst game I've ever played. I think it's better than most give it credit for. However, the problem is it's just not Mortal Kombat. No blood, no fatalities, hardly any important lore or connections. It just exists. And I think if they just would have tied more Mortal Kombat features into the game and changed some of the characters, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as hated. Now, I'm about to say something quite controversial, and I apologise in advance, but this isn't a bad game in the slightest. I think they did get a lot wrong and could have done some stuff better, but fundamentally, I think it's a fine game. Dare I say, I had fun at a couple of points of this. It's not going to win any awards, but it isn't the worst game I've ever played like so many people claimed it to be. However, it is going to go just above Mythologies because of the Mortal Kombat point I referenced. Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to play this, but I'm not mad for having done so, so yeah, sod it. On to the next. Things were in an extremely bad way for Mortal Kombat. The fans didn't have faith or excitement anymore, and Midway knew they probably had one more chance to give people a console Mortal Kombat experience that they wanted. So they took their time, and 3 years later after Mortal Kombat 4, the next true installment was ready for a PS2 release, promising to be exactly what fans wanted and the true Mortal Kombat experience that they craved. But did Midway deliver on what they promised? You're goddamn right they did. Finally, we reach my first ever Mortal Kombat game. Back when I was, I think, 11 or 12, I remember so distinctly wanting this game for months. Every time I dragged my parents to the local game station, all I could talk about was this game. Until one day, my dad bought me it, and little did he know, he was about to introduce me to a game that would pretty much change my life. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance was such an insane shift for the series, and this was immediately apparent by the new intro cinematic that told you everything you needed to know right off the rip. And these cutscenes would become one of my favourite aspects of the PS2 era. They kick ass, and this one might just be the wildest of them all. Midway knew that they needed to turn a new leaf with the latest game, so they went crazy. The intro sets up the Deadly Alliance. Quan Chi has escaped Scorpion in the Netherrealm, also finding the long-lost mummified army of the Dragon King. But he needs necromancy to revive the undefeatable army, so he turns to Shang Tsung, and this team pair up and become, well, the Deadly Alliance. The only problem is, how can Shang Tsung and Quan Chi compare to Shao Kahn and Liu Kang, considering they've done nothing but collectively take L's this entire time? That's where the crazy comes into play. First, they pay a visit to Shao Kahn and actually defeat him, which, fair enough, that's a statement. But we've already beaten Shao Kahn ourselves twice. You'll need more than that. But there is no way that they can just kill the main character of the last 4 games without, like...
Is dead.
They just killed Liu Kang in the intro cutscene. This may not sound like much, but it is a massive deal. This is the equivalent of Street Fighter killing Ryu before the games even started. This was Midway showing that it is a new chapter of MK, and that they weren't afraid to make big decisions like this. The rest of the intro shows Raiden summoning a team together to
Stop this deadly alliance.
cold. Phenomenal intro and sets up the game fantastically. Now, the first thing I'm going to mention here is the music. I haven't mentioned music so far throughout the video, and whilst it's never been bad, I've also not really felt like I've needed to talk about it. Until now, that is. The Deadly Alliance soundtrack is absolutely fantastic, and no song is better than the character select music. Actually, onto the roster. Now, something you'll notice immediately is that a lot of the characters haven't been unlocked, which is another real change here. Yes, Ermac, Melina and Sub-Zero were unlockable in MK3, but so much of the roster here is yet to be found. For the sake of argument, though, there you go. The returning heroes are, of course, the basics: Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Sonya, Kano, Raiden, and that sort. However, 8 new characters join the fight. A very decent roster again, and the new standouts in terms of characters I would say would be Frost, Kenshi, and Natara, as most would become iconic and loved, whilst the others, well, just didn't, unfortunately. With the roster discussed, it's now time to address what options you actually have in this game. Now, if you want the more classic Mortal Kombat experience, you'll head straight to arcade, which works the same as previous games, fight after fight until you reach the sub-boss and main boss. You know how this goes by now. The fighting itself, though, has gone through some impressive changes. Now, each character comes equipped with 3 separate styles of attacks, 2 martial arts related and 1 that grants a weapon, with every different fighting style having its own unique moves, inputs, animations and damage, and can be freely switched between at the push of a button, meaning that every single character in this game feels and plays totally different than the others. A massive improvement over the previous game, and all of the fighting styles are well animated, easy to pick up, and the potential for combos has never been better, thanks to many pop-up attacks, making it so the more you play and get used to your trusted character, the more impressive moves you can create. They can be tricky to pull off, but stringing an incredible 11-hit combo together involving 2 different fighting styles and unique moves makes it so rewarding. A phenomenal improvement. The special moves of course return and are pretty unchanged, although it is worth mentioning that every character has quite a small list to choose from. So in terms of fighting and the arcade ladder, it's never been more fun to beat people up in Mortal Kombat. But now it's sub-boss time, and Deadly Alliance is also a brand new character with Moloch. Another Oni and Dramin's buddy, this giant ogre with the ball does his best to live up to the likes of Goro, Kintaro, and hell, even Mataro, but unfortunately doesn't fare well at all. There's nothing technically bad about Moloch, but he's just forgettable unfortunately. He's the easiest sub-boss yet, which makes sense as the console-released MK games are much more forgiving than their arcade counterparts. But he just doesn't have the same intimidating charm that came before, so he is the weakest in all regards so far unfortunately. With the sub-boss down, it's now time for back-to-back fights with the Deadly Alliance, and I think this is exactly where Deadly Alliance missed a great opportunity to bring back endurance mode. In the arcade ladder you fight both of these chaps separately, which really doesn't make them feel like a final boss in the same way that Shinnok didn't. They're fun to face, but there's no difference between the big bads of the game and say Boraicho or Cyrax, and that's a shame as endurance mode was right there. This should have been a classic 2v1. Beat Shang and Quan Chi jumps in to help. This would have done wonders in not only making them feel more of a final boss, but also more like the Deadly Alliance that they claim to be. They're not bad, but it could have been so much more. When you finish as well, congratulations again, you've stopped the Deadly Alliance, and like before you're told of what happens after the win. Although this time the endings are narrated by Raiden, as you're shown a couple of snippets of pictures of what happened next. They're great, and I actually do prefer them to the cinematics, as they are just what they need to be, which is fine. The arenas you fight in are also fine. Every single arena is a new idea, and there are zero returning old stages from previous games, which I understand, but I wish wasn't the case. The arenas are alright, as I said, but most of them just don't hold a candle to the originals in the slightest. That's not all though, folks, as we still have more game modes and a lot of new to discuss. Next, let's talk about Conquest Mode, a new game type that sees players go through hundreds of challenges and training sessions, so you know how to use all of the fighters in the game whilst also being given a ton of lore and backstory upon beating every challenge. Like, I missed this as a kid, but the intro mixed with Conquest lore and all of the character endings and arena bios means this game is like a sodding Souls-like of hidden information. They do a phenomenal job here. However, the missions themselves are just fine to me. Each 10 covers a certain character. At first you go over the basics of combat, but by the end you'll be given some pretty nutty combos to perform. Now, the first maybe 6 missions with each character are a little boring, but as soon as they get to the meaty combo challenges part, this is where they start to get quite fun. Other than that, there isn't really much to discuss. It's Midway's first attempt at a coherent story, and it's fine, but they wouldn't start to realise its full potential until the next game. Now, you may have noticed, folks, that throughout all of the gameplay I've shown, you may have seen me unlock coins as rewards throughout the entire game, and these coins tie into a brand new feature in the game called the Crypt. Once you enter, you are greeted with a collections of coffins and costs. Spend the money and unlock what's within. It could be anything from concept art or a piece of music, all the way to an entire character or alternate costume for said fighter. So spending your well-earned money is vital here, as it only unlocks more of the game. The only thing I will say, however, is that the grind for the coins is absolutely ridiculous. There are 7 different colours of coins that all work differently. So if you have a coffin, say, priced at 700 red coins, you can't use any other colour to pay for it, which turns it into pain very quickly as you don't earn coins easily. It's smart as it forces the player to sink time into seeing what the 100% of it could look like, but there are still characters in this game that I have never played, as I could just never get enough money to unlock them, which is a shame, but I at least get the thought. The Crypt on the whole is another phenomenal move for Mortal Kombat, and something else that we would see become a series staple. So I can't be too mad, as again this is their first attempt at something like this. With all of the other improvements across the game, how do the new fatalities fare? Well, unfortunately not the best really. Each character only has the one, which is a problem really, as there are no other versions in this game either. But the one that players do get, most of them are bad. Now technically there are more blood and gore in all of them than ever before, but unfortunately they just aren't good. Lee May kicking somebody's head off, Mavado's spiky boots, or Natara just biting a bit of neck aren't good enough. And that's not even mentioning the worst fatality in the entire series. Quan Chi's awful giraffe neck thing. What the fuck were they thinking? Also, if you folks think I'm being mean to a game that came out in 2002, peep this interview, as even the Holy Father Ed Boon himself says that it's sodding stupid.
Yes, there are plenty of fatalities that I thought did not belong in a Mortal Kombat game.
What kind of stuff?
Quan Chi's from Mortal Kombat 5 was ridiculous. I can't believe we shipped the game with that.
Don't get me wrong, there are some decent ones. Scorpion using his spear for the first time with a fatality, and unironically, I love Sue House because of the little crawl the person does on the floor. I love that, it was great to me. But yeah, unfortunately, it's just not up to par, which is the real shame. It is also worth noting that I also played Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, which is the Game Boy Advance port of Deadly Alliance. For the most part, it holds up fairly well from a gameplay perspective, but unfortunately, I couldn't play it for long because the graphics are pretty rough. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a decent attempt at a replication that I'm sure many people would have enjoyed at the time. But compared to the original, it's not even close. The roster is also wild, as they bin some of the most important characters like Kung Lao, Katana, and even Sub-Zero. But for some reason, Sector's playable here, and Serena again, for some bizarre reason. Absolutely no clue. Folks, we've arrived at a new era of Mortal Kombat. Also, get ready to hear new era a bunch during this series. Deadly Alliance was such a crucial and important game for the Mortal Kombat series. If this game didn't do well, I guarantee you the series would be dead. And now this is the brand new standard of Mortal Kombat. This is what people expect. They want fun, they want gore, and they want content. And Deadly Alliance gave it in abundance. So it goes without saying, but Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance obviously takes #1 on the list and is the new reigning champ. But reigning for how long? As apparently, Mortal Kombat have already got the next game on the way, and it's meant to be even better. Only 2 years later, Deception dropped. Now, when I finally got my hands on it, I was so excited to see what more it could bring to the table. First, let's talk about the intro sequence and my personal favourite of the bunch. It's the final fight to stop the Deadly Alliance, and the fight seems to be going Raiden's way, until it doesn't. The Deadly Alliance have won. However, within moments, they turn on each other and another fight ensues before Quan Chi emerges solo victorious. But on his victory, a brand new threat emerges, as Onaga, the Dragon King, has finally been rendered. Oh, and I hear you asking, how big of a threat is Onaga? Well, Quan Chi can't stop him. When Shang Tsung wakes up, they both can't stop him. And hell, why not throw Raiden on top? And that still isn't anywhere near enough. The intro ends with Raiden charging every fibre of his power into a single attack that, when detonated, instantly kills the three of them. But it doesn't even scratch Onaga, who now has his crown and his army. He's the threat. Go kill him. I cannot stress how incredible this opener was, but enough simping over the intro. Let's get to the game itself. The roster this time around, however, is again just simply magnificent. More series classics return besides the expected few that always do. Back on the big screen are Melina, Ermac, Baraka, Cabal, Sindel, and hell, even Zombie Liu Kang. And seeing these characters again after so long was so fantastic. But not only that, we do get some returns from the previous game as well, with Kenshi, Li Mei, and Bo Raicho, and a small collection of brand new characters as well, like Ashra, Shujinko, Hotaro, and Havoc, in this phenomenal 24 character roster. And it's also worth mentioning that in the GameCube version, you also get Shao Kahn, Goro, and Blaze as playable characters as well, which is insane. This, without question, is the strongest roster so far in Mortal Kombat by a country mile. Well, to me at least. As far as the arcade side of things are, again, the same as the previous game, but each character does have a couple more special moves, back to around 4 or 5, which was great. So let's cut straight to the sub-boss, and this time around, it's Noob Smoke. An interesting choice for sure, but these two combined are actually quite a fun sub-boss. I wouldn't say the most iconic. In fact, I kind of forgot Deception had a sub-boss until I played it again for this. The fight is fun though, and it is a decent step up in difficulty, which I also really appreciated. And also, it would have been amazing to have fought Shang Tsung and Quan Chi like this in the previous game. However, Onaga has some big shoes to fill, so how does he fare? Well, he's a true final Mortal Kombat boss, that's for sure. This bitch is a tank. I mean, look at him. He hits like a truck, he can't be staggered or comboed, and has incredible special moves that can hit from across the entire bastard arena. But Midway was also genius with this, and added in arena breakables that once destroyed will hurt Onaga and leave him vulnerable for a a short time, which is just the chef's kiss of balancing the fight. Then when you win, you get a glorious death scene of Onaga exploding before you get your classic ending scenes, which again mirror the previous game. I would also have to say that Onaga is my favourite end boss so far, and I am begging on my hands and knees for Onaga to make a return in the future, as this is unfortunately the only time we see him in the entire series. Well, kinda. Currently, all I'm doing is singing this game's praises, so let's see if the mood continues as we head on over to the new and redefined Conquest mode. I wonder what slight changes they've made to streamline... They've changed the entire fundamentals of it, and now it's an actual mini RPG adventure game with a unique story, amazing characters, fun gameplay, and amazing visuals. Yeah, alright, of course it is. Yeah, I'm not joking. Conquest mode was rebuilt from the ground up, and now you play a story where a character called Sujinko must travel all of the realms in Mortal Kombat, collecting unique items on behalf of an elder god called Damashi. You start off young, and the more tutorials and fight you get in along the way age your character so that you finish the story as an old man and the Sujinko you may recognize from the roster. I cannot stress how phenomenal this game mode is, folks, as there is so much content in here. From all of the incredibly hidden secrets you'd expect from classic arcade experiences like hidden characters, unlockable fighters, secret fights, but I mean just the fundamentals. This game has you go to all of the realms some you've only heard about. Order Realm, Chaos Realm, Outworld, Nether Realm, all of them. And they are all pretty damn unique and different. The characters' voice acting are also doing a really good job. It's not the best voice acting you've ever heard, and most of the lines fall flat.
I heard the guard say that his favorite meal is ham.
Ham. I love ham. Thank you very much.
But I think it's really charming in a goofy way, and I love talking to all of the characters that I saw. But then it also gives you fantastic lore, a deep story that connects you to the characters you play as, and also helps you understand the combat with tutorials implemented well. Like, there is zero bad things to say about this game mode, not one. Within the story as well, it's revealed that once you've collected all of the relics, you are actually claiming them for Onaga, and not the elder god Damashi like you once thought. Damn, if only there was a word for that betrayal. Deceit even. Untruth, trickery if you will. Anyway, in short, Conquest mode is the best it's ever been, and by a country mile. For the first time in replaying all of these games with deception, I didn't want to stop. In fact, I didn't. My point is, whenever I have a bit of free time, I still play this, and I'm loving it. It's also worth noting that the crit returns from the last game as well. However, it works the exact same as before. But thankfully, the coins are much easier to earn, meaning the overall experience is a lot less of a grind, which is again another thing this game does better. That's not all though, folks, as Deception brings two entirely brand new game modes as well. Firstly, let's talk about Puzzle Combat. Basically, a weird Tetris spin-off where you must defeat your opponent by making sure your tiles don't ever fill your screen by connecting 4 colours. Whilst this happens as well, you may notice little cute versions of characters also have a scrap mid-tile off. A great game mode, it truly is. Not what you go into Mortal Kombat for, of course, but I played this quite a bit and I definitely will again. The other, however, is kind of mental. A full working version of Mortal Kombat chess. And no, I'm not joking, you fill your board and play chess. However, when you get to take an opponent's piece, that's when you'll be thrown into a classic brawl. So they've even implemented the Mortal Kombat aspect well into this. Now, I am a bit of a nerd, and I quite like chess, I can't lie. I used to play it with my grandma when I was younger, and I've always enjoyed it. So a Mortal Kombat chess experience and done well? Who'd have thought? Okay, folks, last game they were a touch disappointing, but how do the fatalities fare this time around? Well, I'm so happy to say that they are back to true form as well. Each character now has 2 again, and the quality of the fatalities has also improved considerably. Great animations, great action shots, and plenty of gore. There are a few weaker examples, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, they are fantastic. That's not all. There is a new type of ality within this game too, and it's amazing. Normally upon your defeat, you just have to stand there and await your demise. But not in Mortal Kombat Deception, as when you lose, you now have a brand new option.
Kill yourself.
Yes, of course, Harakiri's enter the series for the first time, and unfortunately, their only time as well. If you're quicker than your opponent, you can punch in a code and go out on your own terms, which is just another lovely little touch that I don't think I would have ever have thought to implement. And I'm gutted we haven't seen these return since, so for the new Mortal Kombat, God, I hope they don't call it Mortal Kombat 2, but I'm expecting Harakiri's to be in the next entry. They need to be. They are just an incredible idea, and being able to use Harakiri's online is give me They had already mastered the Mortal Kombat formula, and it truly was the best definitive version of Mortal Kombat that you could play, and some would argue still is. It is without question one of the greatest Mortal Kombat games that will ever exist. And if you haven't played this yet, I highly recommend going back and giving Deception a go. You will be pleasantly surprised by how much you enjoy this game. So, without saying, Mortal Kombat Deception is the new #1, and it will take a hell of a game to knock that off its throne. Again, also worth mentioning that shortly afterwards, the PSP received its own port of Mortal Kombat Deception, renamed now as MK Unchained. This is a direct port over to the PSP, but comes with more characters than ever before, with Jax, Kitana, Shao Kahn, Goro, just as a couple of examples. This was a fantastic port, and it was amazing to finally play some of the characters that I've never been able to give a go before. So another great way to get your Mortal Kombat fix on the go. After Deception, fans could not wait for another entry. MK popularity was at an all-time high, and Midway knew it. So that's when they made one of the craziest and riskiest decisions they possibly could. The next Mortal Kombat game is almost ready, and once again, they are trying to make an adventure game. So, sure, let's try it again. How did they do this time? Well, they knocked it out the f***ing park. Only a year later, Shaolin Monks released, and I don't think anybody was expecting this as the next move for Mortal Kombat. But looking at Deception's Conquest mode, you can see that this was always on the cards. And spoiler alert, the game is fantastic. Let's begin with the intro and the story. So Shaolin Monks is set after the events of the first game. Shang Tsung is hosting his tournament and everybody is just going mental on each other. And again, the opening is great. When Shang Tsung loses, Goro saves the day and all of the bad guys escape. When they attack Earthrealm a little while later, it's now up to us to find Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn and take them both down. With that, you're immediately thrown into Goro's lair after picking your main character of choice, Kung Lao or Liu Kang. Now, ideally, this game would be played co-op, as that's what it was made for. But for today's adventure, I must trek solo. Also, picking Kung Lao as I prefer him to Liu Kang. Here we learn all the basics of Mortal Kombat, the attacks, movements, special moves, XP, leveling up, and unlockable powers. Immediately, the controls are wonderful, even for today. Picking up and playing is incredibly easy to do. In fact, it doesn't take long for us to unlock our first fatalities. Now, for once, I'm going to talk about the fatalities now, as they work totally different in this game. There are 3 types in total, with you unlocking the different types throughout the game. There are fatalities, multalities, and brutalities. When the bar is full, special attack the enemy and input one of the many fatality codes to instantly kill them in a spectacular style. And the collection that all of the characters have are brilliant. From classic staples to hilarious references and ideas, they are all a ton of fun to unlock and watch. Multalities are the second form, and these kill all enemies within a small radius around you. Again, the animations are great, but there are fewer to perform. Finally, brutalities, and these just have you going mental and kill as many people as you can within a certain time limit. All of them are fantastic and implemented well, so it was really nice to finally see fatalities within a side project. Straight afterwards, we're introduced to the first boss of the game, a rather large Oni creature that we speedily introduce to death. With that, we unlock our first upgrade and now are able to perform massive leaps now to cross gaps. This, honestly folks, is the building blocks for the entire game, as our objective is to head to different locations, killing bosses, to gain power and weaken Shang Tsung for the final fight. And this little taster of what's to come definitely got me excited for the bosses that I'd recognise. Throughout the story, your character, like in Deception, will visit many fantastic locations in the game, so being able to see all of these locations and walk within them was just wonderful. As you can tell, a ton of thought has gone into the level design, and all of it just radiates Mortal Kombat, which again is another wonderful improvement to what came before. Now, besides all of the fantastic movement, smooth combat, and great levels, one of the biggest focus of the game is clearly the boss fights, and they are all larger than life and a ton of fun to go through. There are also a bunch of them throughout the the game. Reptile, Melina, Goro, Scorpion, Baraka as just a few examples. But you fight everybody you'd expect to and more, with every single boss fight bringing something new to the table also. For example, the start of Reptile's fight has you simply try to reach him whilst avoiding a huge snake. And for Baraka, there are phases to his boss fight where he will throw burning monks at you. But somehow, every fight is truly unique. These boss fights are so much fun and truly are the highlight of the game for me, as when I reached one I sat up in my chair for it, and that says something. It's also worth saying that every boss here has a hilariously satisfying death animation as well, which is just the cherry on the cake here. The game itself is also a decent challenge. I wouldn't say it's difficult, but some parts certainly do make you sweat in all of the right ways. And once again, I'd say its level of balancing is perfect. I could never fault the deaths that got me, and I never felt like I was underleveled for a fight. That is, until you reach the end of the game. The final bout is a tough one, but it's wonderful. It's 3 fights back to back with Shang Tsung, Kintaro, and the final boss, of course, Shao Kahn. This was difficult back then, and still is now, and truly is the final test of the game. But again, it doesn't feel unfair, just the final obstacle in a long and great journey. Now, honestly folks, there isn't too much more to discuss in my opinion. The style of this game is quite simple in premise, and it's the same from start to finish. However, the journey, the plethora of unlocks, and the fact that it's just full to the brim with secrets means that simple is good because it allows you to get lost in the universe as much as possible. And I really mean full to the brim with secrets. Not only are there entirely hidden boss fights that require the player to backtrack and go off the beaten bush to be able to find them, such as Ermac, Kano, and Melina again, but these little red yin-yang symbols are collectibles, and each unlocks something as simple as concept art to an entire new character, which is again great. I got lost in this game so much, and like Deception, just could not put it down. So again, really cementing that this game is wonderful, and if you haven't had the chance to play this before, I beg you to give it a go. It is simply wonderful. It's also worth mentioning that there is an entire other game mode in Shaolin Monks as well, although since I'm a loner, I can't show any of it because I don't have a second controller. But if you wanted a more classic feeling, you could load up small maps with iconic characters and beat the stuffing out of each other in a much more familiar experience. But I can't say much on it, as again, I couldn't play it this time around. Now, I know that I haven't talked about Shaolin Monks as much as the other games, but trust me, it is absolutely magnificent, and there is a reason why everybody is begging for a sequel or a remaster, including myself. It is genuinely fantastic. Now, I don't think it's as good as Deception, but every other Mortal Kombat? Honestly, yeah. So even though it's in a completely different style to most of the games, it is currently going to take the number 2 spot. Shaolin Monks surprised a lot of fans and was a welcome addition to the series. But it wouldn't take long for the next entry to be ready. And this time around, Midway decided to do something absolutely insane, as apparently the next installment has every character that's ever existed as playable fighters. Reached the first Mortal Kombat that I got on release day. I have been looking forward to Armageddon for some time, and after hearing all of the things that they'd promised, it had a lot to live up to. So let's begin with the intro as per usual. This again is just another fantastic start. Armageddon has begun. A new godlike power has been created, and now every single combatant in history is after the prize of Blaze. And that takes us all the way to the base of a pyramid. What ensues is nothing short of total chaos. The ultimate battle for light and darkness over unlimited power. Long story short, the numbers dwindle as everybody kills each other trying to climb the pyramid. Now, we don't see who comes out on top, but the intro ends with a magnificent shot on the brand new big bad of the game, Blaze. Kill him and godhood is yours. Oh, and this is also nearly my favourite intro out of the entire bunch for this clip alone.
Like moths to flame, they would be drawn to battle.
Anyway, the first thing that we need to do is to talk about that roster, and it was totally true. Every single previous character in the franchise is now 100% playable, with over 60 total characters to choose from, including old classics, a couple of new heroes, all previous sub-bosses, and all main bosses are now playable as well. This is an absolutely crazy concept, and I remember actually seeing the roster for the first time and just being sitting there like, how how did they do this? And we'll get to the how. But yeah, it's hard to talk about the roster when every single character is a part of it. Simply insane, but with that, let's move on. Gameplay for the most part is also the same as before, but slightly scaled back to accommodate the insane 63 fighter roster. For example, every character now only has 2 fighting styles as opposed to 3, which totally makes sense and doesn't really impact the gameplay too much in my opinion. Other than that, honestly, there's only one more addition that I can really talk about, and that is the new aerial combat. At certain times during the fight, you may be able to fling your opponent into the air and continue the hammering briefly before returning to the floor. Fine, I suppose. A nice addition, but nothing really to scream out about either. So let's just talk about the new big bad of the game, Blaze. Now this is technically the same Blaze that we've met before, just more of his ultimate form now, if you will. And for the most part, he is a fine final boss. A huge hulking mess of lava and muscle, he's quick to take your health away and can't be staggered. He's not as developed as any of the other game bosses, and that's of course not Blaze's fault, but he does feel a touch forgettable compared to those that came before. He's absolutely fine, don't get me wrong, but he's obviously not going to compete with the likes of Shao Kahn or Onaga. Well, to me at least. Like before, when you strike him down, he explodes in brilliant fashion before we get the classic character endings. Only here, they absolutely suck. To save space, they couldn't do the pictured narrated ending, so now every character just does this really weird, bizarre dance thing as we're told of what they did next. I hated this. It's such an underwhelming end to the arcade, but it is what it is. Next, let's move on to Conquest. Now again, there isn't really much to say. You can definitely tell that this Conquest feels like a perfect blend of Deception and Shaolin monks, and that's a good thing. The areas are more lively and the world feels better without the scale of Shaolin monks. Conquest follows the tale of 2 brothers, Taven and Dagon, as they both fight against each other trying to find and kill Blaze for his powers. Taven and Dagon's parents created Blaze and this power to see which son would take their mantle, and that's pretty much it. We join Taven as we travel again throughout the realms, meeting heroes and villains and trying to get closer to the power. I would say that I still prefer Deceptions personally, but that's just because I prefer the charm and the playstyle in that game. Now, in the last mainline game, we got puzzle and chess combat. I wonder what Armageddon will bring. Well, I don't think any of us were expecting Kombat Kart, a pretty fun and hilarious Mario Kart clone that is now in Mortal Kombat. And again, it's honestly a ton of fun. Opportunities to kill other races, unique abilities, stage deaths, and just constant chaos. This is more than a valid game mode, and I remember booting Armageddon up whenever I had a racing game itch, as this would scratch that rather nicely. So another hilarious and shockingly well implemented game mode. Now with the roster you may be thinking, 63 characters, what's the point? And you are correct. Which is why on top of all of this you can also create your own custom fighter for the first time as well. Again, this is implemented well as you have a lot more control than you might think. Throughout the entire game you will be unlocking new cosmetics and talents for your chosen heroes, and the customization alone is actually quite impressive. Just Google some of the iconic creations people have made and you will see that there is a hilarious amount of potential here, but I can't say I used it that much myself. Like before though, the crypt returns and it is basically the same. The only change they've made this time around is now keeping everything under the 1 coin. So now it's more streamlined than it's ever been, which is another great change in my opinion. But here you unlock secrets, extra costumes, behind the scenes and the stuff you'd expect. Now again, there isn't much left to talk about folks. So let's move on to the fatalities. Oh, well no, we can't, because the fatalities are gone. Well, in the way that we know them. And instead, the brand new create a fatality. When your enemy is defeated, you will now be granted a short duration of time to spam your controller with inputs and revel as every new input injures the enemy in a specific way, allowing you to chain extremely brutal hits together to perform an over-the-top fatality. Or that's what it was in premise. I'm not going to beat around the bush, folks. This sucks. It absolutely sucks. It does make sense, as giving all 63 characters their own individual animations and fatalities would have been too much. So making all characters share this system instead does make sense. However, it's so not worth it. The animations are lacking, the inputs are a nightmare to perform, with each successful attack speeding up the counter for the next, making it so that I only ever really got 3 or 4 hits in before they just fell over anyway. I understand why they did it, as I said, but I hated this so much. And so did everybody else, unfortunately making Armageddon known as the Mortal Kombat with the worst fatalities. So it's horrible to end on a bad note, but here we are. It goes without saying that a 63-player character roster is absolutely insane. However, I don't think it was worth sacrificing so much of everything else just to be able to achieve this. Now, I'm not too sure why, but Armageddon is also the weakest out of the PS2 collection in my opinion. It's not a bad game, but I would play everything else above it. So for that reason alone, it is going to go just below Deadly Alliance. With this, people were ready for a change. The PS2 era served Mortal Kombat greatly, but with new hardware around the corner, people wanted to see what would be in store for the next chapter of Mortal Kombat. And honestly, I don't think a single person was expecting what we got. Yep, nobody expected this collab in the slightest, but the first Mortal Kombat game for the 7th generation of consoles is in fact Mortal Kombat's universe blended with DC Comics. Like, I still can't get over the concept, but it's exactly that. Ever wanted Sub-Zero fighting Batman? Raiden fighting Superman? Or the Joker fighting Katana? Yep, me neither, but that's what we've got now, so let's dissect this bastard and see what's going on. Firstly, the roster. As this is a blend of two universes, it also needed to be a perfect blend for the roster, and for the most part, I think they did a good job with it. All of the staples you'd expect on both sides appear, with Mortal Kombat bringing the likes of Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden and Liu Kang, and on DC's side we have Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Joker, and that sort of thing. Not bad at all. The story, yeah, the story is wild. In both universes, the big bad is being taken care of. Shao Kahn is being sent through a portal, and Darkseid is also having similar treatment. With a massive boon, this merges the universes together, and now we have to face a new evil that could possibly destroy the realms. Here we begin by choosing what side we want to play as. I, of course, went for Mortal Kombat because duh. Now, every chapter has you take control of a different character as you work your way through the campaign. Now, honestly, folks, the story is wild, and I don't mean the concept itself, but the cutscenes, the voice acting, the animations, it's just all weird across the board.
What is this place?
It's the Batcave.
Now, long story short, the entire campaign is actually quite simple. MK character meets DC character, don't trust them and fight them. Rinse and repeat for every chapter leading up to the final bout. By the end of the game, of course, the lead heroes realise that they should be friends and go smite down Dark Khan, who of course dies, eventually ending the campaign. And oh, by the way, that is his name, Dark Khan. How genius. Now, that is an extraordinarily simple rendition, but honestly, I hated this campaign. I really do. They wasted so much potential, as the same thing happens in every single chapter, and every character in this game is a bumbling moron except for Quan Chi. I know it's Midway's first attempt at a story like this, so credit where it's due, of course. And what we see now will become, of course, the blueprints of what's to come, so you do have to give them some credit. However, as it stands, the campaign sucks. It makes very little sense, all of the characters are idiots, and it just doesn't match for me. However, what I will say is that it is unironically hilarious. Here are some of my favourite moments throughout the story.
What can I say? The ladies dig me. Oh.
Now maybe I can get some answers out of you.
You don't look so good, mate.
I'll take that.
Hey!
Wait, wait a sec. Wait, she ran into that voluntarily. What? With the mediocre story at best, let's discuss the gameplay. Now, this time around, gameplay has shifted quite a bit. The arenas are the same in premise, big open circles for you to move around in, but gone are the fighting styles. Now, every character has their own Argos catalogue of moves that they can perform, and every single one of them is unique. This is a wonderful improvement. The combat feels fantastic, and every character feels smooth and unique in every way possible. So, thankfully, some good news. A few new mechanics also enter the arena. Transitions are brought back like before, but but now they are considered small minigames, as when you knock your opponent through a wall or off a cliff, you now have to strategically mash to do the most damage, with the cap being at 30. These are good on paper, but far too RNG dependent to me, as it's basically just luck if you come out on top. But the biggest new feature is Rage. This was Midway's answer to the question, how can Kano fight Superman? Well, that's thanks to the Combat Rage, and no, that is what it's actually called, Combat Rage. The worst name you could possibly give it, and there was nothing more hilarious than actual characters saying this with their actual faces.
You helped Darkseid invade the Earth, remember?
Fight! 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 Both of you calm down. You're being poisoned by the Combat Rage.
Poisoned by what?
The Rage mechanic allows you to go a little bit mental briefly once a fight. Activate it and you will do a hell of a lot more damage and have armor until it's over. It's fine, I guess, but there's nothing more annoying than doing really well against an opponent, only for them to pop Rage and pulp you to death within seconds. So I could take it or leave it. The arcade mode returns as well and works just the same as before. Honestly, there's nothing here to note, so let's just discuss the final boss. This prick is a nightmare and I hate him. He is truly a final MK boss with stupidly damaging attacks, armor and confidence. Dark Khan absolutely handed me my own spine many times, and honestly, I kinda did like the difficulty spike. Now, I hate the design and the moveset. I really think Dark Khan is stupid as heck, but the fight itself is a ton of fun, and this is one of those games where beating him feels fantastic. So better than it all being terrible, I suppose. Now, before we'd have a lot to discuss with side content, but honestly, there's barely any here. A new combo challenge mode has been added, which honestly I absolutely love. Here you have 10 missions where you must complete ever increasingly difficult combos with your character of choice. And yeah, I really enjoyed these. I'm sadistic and I love a good challenge, so yeah, nothing bad to say. Hell, maybe I'll do a challenge video one time of me beating every single one. Let me know if that's something you'd want to see. Other than that, there's not much else. The crypts in every silly extra game mode has been removed. Now, I did miss the crypt this time, but I didn't need the extra game modes like Combat Kart, as they clearly wanted to take this game in a more serious direction, and I totally get it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I've talked about everything I want to talk about. Nothing left. Nope, that's it. Fine, that's not it. Yes, let's discuss the fatalities, if you can call them that. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet about this game is that it is rated PG-13, the first and only Mortal Kombat game to receive a rating under 18. And this was, of course, because DC didn't want to see Superman getting his head caved in by Sonya. However, fatalities and even heroic brutalities remain in the game. And folks, these have to be truly the worst things of all time. Holy hell, these are all pathetically terrible. The Mortal Kombat side of the game and a couple of DC villains get fatalities. The animations are average at best, the gore is non-existent, and most of the time you know for a fact that that wouldn't have killed somebody. However, for the superheroes, Batman, Green Lantern and Wonder Woman's kind, they now get a shared type called heroic brutalities. They now have a move that puts them down for the fight whilst keeping the enemy alive. And these are even worse than the fatalities. Like, I refuse to believe that this is the best they could have done, even with a PG-13 rating. The reason I didn't want to talk about them is all of them suck, and it is by far the worst and most underwhelming part of the entire game. You cannot make a Mortal Kombat without decent fatalities, and this game proves that in spades. For me, this game is one step forward and two steps back. The change to the models, arenas and combat for the most part are fantastic. The characters have never looked better or played better. The new story structure as well is far from perfect, but the blueprints are there for a nice experience somewhere. But fundamentally, it just isn't Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat vs DCU is easily the black sheep of the series, which is also an incredible feat considering that Special Forces and Mythologist Sub-Zero also exists. And a lot of people regard this as the worst Mortal Kombat ever made, and it's hard to argue with it. Now, me personally, I don't hate this game as much. I think it does get some stuff right, and it is quite fun. Now, I don't know why they decided to go for this collab, and I'm assuming there must be a reason, but for me, it just misses the mark. So, as you're all no doubt aware, it is going to go just above Special Forces because it's at least playable. This game was also the final for Midway before it unfortunately went bankrupt, and a lot of people, including myself, were comfortable with the fact that this was probably the last Mortal Kombat game we were ever gonna get. But oh boy were we wrong, as a couple of years later we got a lovely surprise. Mortal Kombat was revived and making a colossal return. Mortal Kombat hit shelves back in 2011, and I cannot put into words how excited I was for this. Mortal Kombat seemed to give players the perfect experience, and it was also a complete reboot of the entire series. At this point, the story was extremely convoluted and complex, so NetherRealm wanted to take it back to its prime and give players a perfect excuse to hop back into the universe. Firstly, the roster, of course. This, without question, is one of the greatest rosters in Mortal Kombat. Every single expected character is here and playable, but not only that, they all look their best. Over 30 fighters to choose from, all from the classic arcade series. A phenomenal start. This is also when online transactions and DLC really hit the game for the first time as well, as throughout its life we got 4 extra characters as well. 3 Mortal Kombat characters with Rain, Scarlet and Kenshi, but we also got a wild addition with the first ever guest character of Freddy Krueger. Absolutely crazy to have a horror icon like that in this game, but we'll talk more about guest characters later. Now let's move on to the gameplay, and again things are drastically different here. Now the characters' moves and combat feels very similar to MK vs DCU, however gone are the huge 3D arenas. Now you fight on a straight line similar to the arcade releases, and this was such a great move, and I'm so glad that they did this. Honestly, I wasn't really a fan of the 3D arenas, and it took me until this game to figure that out. The combat here is quicker, smoother, and a lot easier to manage now that you don't have to worry about the entire arena you fight on. It's hard to put into words, but trust me, this change was so much for the better, and would become the new standard moving forward. The arenas, of course, are all beautiful as well. A lot of iconic stages returning like Deadpool, Shang Tsung's Throne Room, but all of the arenas are simply stunning, and are a treat to cover in my opponent's blood. Not only that, but many of the stages now have fatalities connected to them as well, so it's just another great opportunity that the devs took to further connect everything together. But for the first time in the series, there are more mechanics than ever. Now you have a special gauge meter at the bottom with each tier doing something different. With 1 bar charged, you can now enhance certain special moves to make them either deal more damage, launch an opponent, or trap them in place as a couple of examples. 2 bars will then give you a breaker, which allows you to stop an enemy mid-combo, and if you manage to fill all 3 bars, that's when you unlock the new X-ray move. This is a devastating animation that, if you hit, will show you the graphic detail of what your opponent's bones go through during these fights, whilst also dealing a rather nice amount of damage. These X-ray moves were phenomenal, and just another feather in the cap for this game that really seemed to know exactly what MK fans wanted. Honestly, a lot of it is actually quite broken by today's standards, but combos have never had such potential, or been this fun, and it was now more rewarding to have a main than ever before. Ermac was mine because, of course he was, he's the best Mortal Kombat character, but due to the diverse roster, I also love swapping between characters, and seeing how well I could do with everyone. Like before, the ladder returns, and this time it's just another return to form. For the most part, it is the same as before. The sub-bosses have also finally returned as well, with you being able to fight either Goro or Kintaro, who are both devastatingly powerful. Again, they're the best they've ever been so far in the game as well. And as you'd expect, you beat all of those and you go straight to Shao Kahn, who is an absolute bastard again. He truly is a difficult boss, like truly tough, but it's so rewarding to finally beat him again. Like everything else, this is easily my favourite ladder experience so far. When you win, you get the cliche explosion and ending, which is also just wonderful. The story as well is framed the exact same way as MK vs DCU, with many chapters and you controlling a different character for each section. It actually begins at the end of Armageddon, surprisingly. Only Raiden and Shao Kahn are left, and Shao Kahn has already defeated Blaze and took his powers. Just before Shao Kahn can kill Raiden, though, Raiden sent a message back in time to the first Mortal Kombat game to warn him. He's cryptic as hell, which really doesn't help, but it's just an excuse for us to be back at the first game. The entire story goes through the first 3 games of the original trilogy. Act 1 is the original Mortal Kombat with us defeating Shang Tsung. Act 2 is the first time Shao Kahn comes into play and we defeat him. Finally, Act 3 is the invasion of Earthrealm with Sindel, and we must thwart him yet again. This is the best story so far in my opinion. The characters and animations are at their best, the voice acting is incredible, and it flows nicely. There are some obvious plot holes and stretches for the sake of content, but nothing that can't easily be forgiven, as once again, it's the best it's ever been. Okay, so I really seem to be building this game up, but what about the extra content? So we have the story, story, the arcade ladder, and the online, which has also received a ton of love. Firstly and thankfully, the crypt returns in spectacular fashion, and my god, having it again made it feel so absent in DCU. And again, it's the best it's ever been. It's great to see it return as hero alternative costumes, fatality inputs, art behind the scenes, everything you'd expect and more, with also a cheeky jump scare making the cut too. That's not all though, folks, as Conquest also technically returns here as well. Back in Deadly Alliance, it was 300 missions where you got to learn the characters of the game. Here, it's now the Challenge Tower and has 300 fantastic missions that are all pretty damn wild. From silly premises like Melina wanting to give Scorpion a teddy bear, to fun extra weird game modes, endurance fights, and god, just so much. I genuinely cannot sum up how much content there is in this tower, and if I did, I'd be here all day, so just trust me here that this again is just another great way to waste time. Also, I actually can't show you the reward for beating all of the challenges because it would get me immediately age restricted and demonetized, but there is a very iconic unlock for beating all 300 levels. So far, I've only said amazing things about this game. Well, it's time to get to the fatalities. Every character returns with 2, and pretty much every single one are wonderfully animated, gory, and just a spectacular end, with some of them genuinely making me quiver a little bit. I'm looking at you, Noob Cybot. But honestly, fatalities have never been better, and I can't think of a single one that I didn't love. The Mortal Kombat reboot was so important, and honestly, credit to the devs, they nailed absolutely every component. They gave us pretty much the definitive Mortal Kombat experience. Absolutely everything they went for, they nailed, and this game has no negatives. It's truly phenomenal and a true masterpiece. So, without further ado, the new reigning champ. I said that something quite impressive was going to have to take care of Deception, and that's exactly what this game is. Mortal Kombat hype reached new levels with this entry. It became the best-selling and the most popular pretty much instantly. So, like before, people were now besides themselves waiting for the next experience. And it arrived 4 years later. Again, it seemed NetherRealm had been very busy. The long-awaited sequel for Mortal Kombat 9 had finally released, and just like before, they promised new everythings. And a brand new take on the timeline, as to begin, we are immediately transported 25 years into the future. The story of Mortal Kombat X revolves around a familiar baddie as Shinnok has returned to claim Earthrealm for himself yet again. As you may expect, it's up to Earthrealm and the heroes from the old generation and the new to smite him down. Now, there's a lot more to it than just that, of course, but simply put, that's the story. And with this, MKX also takes a new step into a much darker and grittier world. Once again, gone are the colours of the previous game, and it seems a lot more dire in here now. So before we get into how the story was, let's quickly discuss the roster and the gameplay. Firstly, the roster, and personally, folks, this is again one of my favourite rosters out of the entire franchise. Not only do we get all of the expected characters, but we also get a huge collection of new ones. The most notable, of course, would be the collection of combat kids who are all descendants of the popular heroes. Cassie Cage is Sonya and Johnny's daughter, Jackie Briggs is Jax's daughter, Takeda is Kenshi's son, and Kung Jin is Kung Lao's cousin. They are the main new 4 in my opinion, but it doesn't end there. My second favourite Mortal Kombat character of all time has just been added, and this is going to be really controversial. But my second favourite Mortal Kombat character of all time is D'Vorah, an amazing, disgusting bug lady thing. Most people despise her, they really do. However, I adore her. I don't read into that, so make of that what you will. My point is that the MKX roster is brilliant, and that's not even discussing the DLC characters that really shone this time around. But we also get 4 more guest characters, and they are all horror icons, as playable in this game is Jason Voorhees, Leatherface, the Xenomorph, and the Predator. A phenomenal roster, and since I am a huge horror fan, these were some of my dream picks. So, nothing bad to say at all. For the gameplay, things return mostly the same, with each character having their own unique list of animations and inputs. But a brand new mechanic this time around are the variations. When choosing your character of choice, you now need to pick one of 3 variants, with each slightly tweaking the character for a different sort of playstyle. For example, D'Vorah's 3 are Broodmother, which grants extra bug minions to lock opponents down, Swarm Queen, which adds a wasp tornado as well as explosive bugs to her arsenal, and finally Venomous, which adds poison poison damage to some of their attacks, adding better chip damage overall and better against defensive opponents. But every character has 3 and they're all quite varied. But like most games with mechanics like this one variation will always shine as the strongest. That's essentially the basics, so let's quickly nip back to the story. Now, this isn't my favourite story in the series, but once again, Mortal Kombat really wanted to make a better experience than what came before. And for the most part, I think they did just that. It was also nice to play a story that hadn't really happened before. Fair enough, the concept is the same, but the execution is wonderful as we spend a lot more time in different realms with great characters doing important things, like QTE kicking Quan Chi in his Quan balls. Perfect. In regards to the arcade ladder, once again, it's pretty much identical to what came before. So let's just talk about the new big boss of the game, Corrupted Shinnok. Now, I guess they heard my complaint about Mortal Kombat 4's Shinnok being far too squishy, but what we got this time around isn't exactly better. The final fight has us just face a corrupted version of Shinnok, almost at full power. This boss is, I guess I'm just not a fan of Shinnok, as this didn't fill me with joy, to be honest. He's surprisingly easy considering he still hits hard, has armor and such like that. But this version of Shinnok is unfortunately quite forgettable, so a quite underwhelming final boss, which isn't the best. But that's the first negative, so yeah, can't really complain. Now, another brand new aspect to MKX is the faction wars. Now, unfortunately, I can't show much footage of this since they aren't really supported anymore, but at the start of the game, you pick one of 5 factions. With your chosen faction, you then are in a constant race with every other faction in the game, with monthly online winners and rewards for climbing ranks in your chosen alliance. There's nothing too much here, but you can unlock some decent things for your profile, as well as a couple of fatalities. Side content again returns, however, not as much as what came before. The challenge tower is noticeably missing this time, but instead we have several rotating towers that change themes and styles as often as every hour, and with some being changed weekly or monthly. They're fine again, but you're not going to be spending forever here. The crypt also returns and has had a lot of love poured into it, making it the most interactive crypt so far, and full to the brim with the best kind of goodies you've come to expect. Again, it just seems like I'm singing all of the praises on MKX, but it's really just invalid, folks. This is a lot of people's favourite game in the entire series, and it's really not hard to see why. The graphics are again the best they've ever been, with phenomenal gameplay and plenty to do. It was pretty much guaranteed that this game was going to do well. The only negative I will say about the graphics, however, is that for some reason at the end of every fight, the characters look like they have this really weird scaly sweat going on, and it doesn't look right, but hell, you know a game's good when that's one of the few negatives that I can actually talk about. So I suppose it's that time, folks. Once again, we need to discuss the fatalities. And my god, again, I really do enjoy most of them. Don't get me wrong, a couple this time around are slightly weak and basic, but there are others that are just brilliant and disgusting in all of the perfect ways. But honestly, most characters have at least one great fatality, so again, it was amazing to see the animations, the gore and the pacing again just get better across the board. However, folks, we cannot stop there, as there is a new type of ality that really mixes up the gameplay. MKX decided once again to return brutalities, and we haven't seen these for a considerable time. This means instead of the traditional beat your opponent, then put an input in to kill them, now you can kill them during the final combo of a game. If you are quick enough and hit the right criteria, now a regular move will instead rip your opponent to pieces and end the game that way. Folks, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is probably my favourite addition in any Mortal Kombat game. Learning disgusting combos that end in a great brutality is one of the most satisfying things in the world to me, with all of the animations also being brilliant. There are plenty of lovely references to previous games within them, and this is without question the best way to kill your opponent. Now, folks, I honestly can't believe I'm going to do this, but for me personally, Mortal Kombat X exceeds everything that made 9 so special, and for me is the best Mortal Kombat to date so far. And in the height of its popularity, I would go with MKX every single day. So, some of you may be really offended by this, and I completely get it, but MKX is the new reigning champ. So, it was clear that NetherRealm knew what they were doing now. They had their winning formula, so in theory there should be no more bad Mortal Kombat games. However, we had plenty to wait, as the next sequel wouldn't be released for another 4 years. We now arrive surprisingly at a very controversial entry in the series, and in the 4 years it took for this to release, they actually changed quite a bit whilst keeping the familiar feeling. But let's break this down and see exactly what makes Mortal Kombat 11 so controversial. Let's start with the story. Now, this is where NetherRealm get a little bit carried away in my opinion, as time travel is now canon. And I mean proper time travel, not sending your past self a message. With the defeat of Shinnok in the last game, a new big bad presents herself. The Chrome Chrome Dome Titan herself, Chronica, and the Keeper of Time. She is fed up with Raiden interfering with her perfect plan for the timeline. So Chronica brings a ton of old fighters back to help her eradicate Raiden, and as normal, the good guys must thwart her plan, fighting side by side with old and new. Now, the story here is extremely convoluted, and I hate the time travel aspects to the stories now, as it just makes them all so messy, full of plot holes, and unfortunately MK11 is no exception. To me, it has one of the weakest stories. Don't get me wrong, it is still fun to go through, but without question, the story is all over the place. The roster this time around is honestly fine. Not my favourite, but there are enough classic characters for long-time fans to be happy, as well as a couple of new additions which I quite enjoy. The DLC and special guests of course return as well, with classic combatants like Melina, Shiva, Rain and Nightwolf, but this time around instead of horror icons we got a collection of 80s action heroes for our guests, as well as iconic comic characters. So joining the roster are Rambo, Terminator, RoboCop, but also DC's Joker, and probably the most requested guest character of all time, with Spawn joining the roster as well. Again, not a bad collection of DLC at all. But even with these additions, it's still an average roster to me, even though Devora's back, and I love that too. Oh, and I cannot mention the roster without also talking about Ronda Rousey. Yep, you heard that right, as a massive advert for this game was that Ronda Rousey is the new voice of Sonya Blade, and oh my god, it's appalling. No disrespect to Ronda in the slightest, but this just clearly isn't something that she can do well, as every single line she has is flat as hell.
First I find out I have a kid with Cage, and now this, it's official. God is punishing me.
I deserve your respect.
Whatever, you do-nothing bitch.
But the reason why I mention this now is for a reason you'll come to understand later. With the roster complete, let's talk about the gameplay, as things are certainly different here. First, the speed of the combat has been drastically reduced, and the pace is much slower this time around. Not a problem in my eyes at all, but this was the first straw that some people just didn't gel with. Combos aren't as incentivized as before, and this game really makes you think about the moves you make, as Mortal Kombat 11 punishes mistakes like never before with the all-new crushing blows. Now, if you catch your opponent slacking, you have the opportunity to unleash a devastating crushing blow, which, like the X-rays, show you the damage they create. Again, some people hated these additions, as sometimes you could lose an entire round in just 3 hits, if you're unlucky enough and depending on who you're facing. I myself loved them though, and I always thought they were the perfect balance of risk versus reward. Variations return as well, but not in the same way. Instead of 3 pre-made variations, you now get to choose from a collection of moves. You have 3 available slots to fill up with moves of your choice, and this is brilliant for making your character of choice work for you in the best way that you can. Again, I thought this was a really smart way to improve variations, and I spent many hours just figuring out what each character is truly capable of. With the addition of crushing blows, that also means that X-ray moves have also been removed to the game in light of another new addition, the Fatal Blow. A lot of people complained about X-ray attacks being spammed in previous games, so the developers made another change. Instead of being able to use it every time you've got a full bar, now you will have to wait until you're hit under 30% of health. Then the game will allow you to use a Fatal Blow once for the entire match. Once you use it, it's gone. But it works the same in X-rays, as it gives you a phenomenal animation and plenty of blood. I thought that this personally was a really smart compromise, and again, another improvement I'm happy with. Speaking of improvements though, we now have to discuss the biggest one within MK11, and I would just say blanketly that it's customization as a whole. Now, it's not perfect by any means, as there are a lot of bad options and colour palettes that make no sense, like making Sub-Zero yellow. No, stop that. But for the first time, you are able to customize your intro animations, outro animations, your entire outfit, specific details of your character, with you unlocking more the more you use your main of choice. This, for me, was perfect. I adored the level of detail, and trying to unlock everything I could with all of the characters that I love to play. It just filled the game with so much content. Like, it's a silly thing to love about a game, but these tweaks were some of my favourite changes, and I always judge the players I faced based on what intro and outros they used online. So again, another really good decision. That's not the only changes they made though, folks, as the Crypt returns as well, but this time, again, in a new light. In Mortal Kombat 11, the Crypt is now a full-on mini RPG mode, where you have to make your way throughout Shang Tsung's island, unlocking new rooms and completing puzzles for rewards. swords. Most people agree that this is the best the Crypt has ever been, and again it's just more fine-tuning to give the player the best experience possible, and you can feel it, it's wonderful. The towers and arcade mode of course retain as well, and the final boss this time around is Kronika, of course it is. And honestly, I hate this bald bastard. Not only is her character a bumbling moron in the story, but she's also so one-dimensional it hurts. And to fight, she's also a nightmare. With her powers being time, I was expecting a lot more than what we got, as all we face is a silly git who spams lasers and sand attacks, with the occasional dinosaur, and she's also an armored up tank. She hits like a maniac, can't be staggered, comboed, or juggled, meaning that most of the time you face her, you're just gonna spam her and zone her until she dies, because that's all you can really do against her anyway. She sucks, and it was a total waste of potential yet again. It also needs mentioning by this time in the story that Liu Kang has become a god himself, and the full story ends with him resetting the entire Mortal Kombat timeline yet again, hoping to create the perfect universe. The DLC was, again, fine, not the worst, not the best, a ton of bizarre choices and plot holes again, but it was fun, so why not, sure. For me, MK11 has such a massive place in my heart. I truly love this game. It's not perfect and it does get a bit wrong, but for the most part I totally saw this as a worthy sequel, and I don't think it deserves anywhere near the amount of hate it gets. This was also the first time that I actually started to play MK a little competitively. Me and a couple of friends back in uni joined some Mortal Kombat 11 tournaments, and they were so much fun. So I do reckon a lot of the enjoyment comes from the nostalgia of those days as well. But even going back now, I have so much fun with this game and still love it dearly. But my opinion isn't important since we haven't discussed the fatalities yet. And folks, they knocked them out of the park. The fatalities in MK11 are some of the most disgusting we've had in the series yet, and I'm looking at you, Devora, for that. But they also feel incredibly cinematics with a slow motion pause on the blood and the gore, and I just, again, honestly loved all of these. Brutalities also return yet again, and once again, better than ever. They have been fine-tuned a lot. Every character has been given a bigger collection of them, and they all hit a lot harder than in the previous game. So once again, NetherRealm really understood how to take their IP to the next level, as these are some of the best fatalities of all time in my opinion. Reception for Mortal Kombat 11 was such a mixed bag, and honestly, it's probably one of my favourite entries. I really didn't mind the changes, and I thought everything played so smoothly and wonderfully. The roster's great, and again, there's just so little to complain about with this game. Or at least I don't think there's much to complain about. But however good I think it is, unfortunately, I don't think it's top 3 material. So for me, Mortal Kombat 11 is going to take a seat just behind Deception. It is still an absolutely worthy game to play, but I would play the other 3 over it pretty much any day. With that, folks, we only have a single Mortal Kombat game left to cover. NetherRealm spent another 4 years pulling out all of the stops and trying to create a perfect Mortal Kombat game that people would adore for years to come. And here we are, the final game in the franchise that came out only last year, Mortal Kombat 1. God, I still despise the fact that they called it Mortal Kombat 1. But right off the bat, I went crazy for this game, and just like before, NetherRealm really decided to shake things up a bit and try to keep everybody happy. Let's begin with the story. And folks, I can't lie, I need to say this up front, this is one of the weakest stories in the entire series. I hated this story. Liu Kang has indeed reset the entire timeline yet again, only this time many things are different. For example, Raiden is now the chosen champion, and he's not a god in the slightest, and Shao has never been Khan, and is just a general, hence his new name, General Shao. And we essentially start back at zero, learning everything about these new versions of these characters. It doesn't take long for the evil Kronika to return, however. Somehow she makes her way back into the timeline, employing Shang Tsung, General Khan, and Quan Chi to help her. Folks, this story is an absolute mess. The entire game was teased as a reboot and the perfect place for people to restart their Mortal Kombat journeys. But spoiler alert, it's not that in the slightest. It is a direct continuation from 11, as the big bad of the game is Shang Tsung, and the version of Shang Tsung is the one that we killed in MK11, where Liu Kang physically said he has been deleted forever now. Now, they do come up with some convoluted bull about the fight being so large it split the timelines in many sections, but no. Do not reboot the entire series and advertise it as a reboot when it is not, as the reveal that Shang Tsung was the villain all along teased one of my favourite characters returning, and I have been waiting to see him again for over a decade. Yeah, not Onaga, Shang Tsung. Pathetic. I cannot stress how much I hated all of this. I am so bored of Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn, as they have been the villains for like 80% of the games, and I was ready for a new reboot to start something new. But it just turns out that NetherRealm are terrified of commitment, and they would rather restart the entire timeline off yet again than kill a beloved character. It genuinely makes me miss the Midway days where they weren't scared of the world they created. And again, this is just an insane waste of potential, so unfortunately we are really not off to the best start. But story aside, what's the roster and the gameplay like? Well, hit and miss. Let's begin with the roster. And folks, with all due credit, this is without question my favourite roster from any game ever. It is literally perfect, as finally they listened to us and decided to revive the PS2 era of combatants, as returning for the first time in years are Natara, Ashra, Reiko and Li Mei, as well as returning classics and fan favourites. No new characters this time around, but I'm not mad, as this without question is the best roster to date. Here though as well is where the DLC and the guest characters start to get a little bit lacking as well. Now we do have some fantastic additions with Takeda, Ermac, Cyrax, Noob and Quan Chi, who are all great, and the guest characters started off really good with Peacemaker, Omni-Man and Homelander making their debuts, and who all fit perfectly in my opinion. And we are currently going through the release of Chaos Reigns, a new DLC pack that includes a collection of new characters and a story. And the guest characters for this pack are absolutely pathetic. Firstly, we have Ghostface, which isn't that bad at all, and he's well implemented, but we're soon getting Conan the Barbarian and the T-1000 from Terminator 2. These are just such a waste of roster space. Who in the name of Satan's portion was asking for the T-1000 over another original Mortal Kombat character that we were all really eager to see? Warner Brothers have become obsessed with needing to put guests in their game, and unfortunately they've used all of the good ones up, so they need to stop now, please. Oh, and fun fact, the DLC pack that gives you these characters and a couple more chapters of a story costs an unbelievable $80. That is genuinely one of the most pathetic things I've seen in gaming, and it sold appallingly. So bad in fact that every single bit of future DLC was immediately cancelled from MK1, which is wild. Before we're done with the roster though folks, we also need to mention the voice acting. Last time we had Ronda as Sonya, this time Natara is played by none other than Megan Fox. Jesus Christ, who decided this was a good idea? This is easily one of the worst voice acting jobs I've ever heard in my entire life. Megan clearly couldn't give a smeg about this and gave barely the minimum.
Serena's right. Because of Quan Chi's magic, my realm's people are no longer poisoned by sunlight. We've finally escaped the shadows.
That blade's enchanted.
It was forged to destroy evil. It's slain many of your vampire kind.
We can't help what we are. That we feed on blood doesn't make us evil.
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
Please, NetherRealm, stop doing this. The voice acting on the whole in this game is fantastic, but please stop hiring underqualified goons to help sell your game. Literally nobody cared that Megan was in this game, so what's the point if it only hurts the end product? Anyway, let's move on to the gameplay, folks. And again, it is totally different from MK11. The speed now matches closer to MKX, and combos are in the limelight as well once again. Each character plays brilliantly, and they feel pretty much exactly as they should. But we of course need to discuss the brand new mechanic this time around with cameo fighters. When you pick your main, you now have to choose a secondary character to help you throughout the fight, and each cameo specialises in something a bit different. For example, Goro provides some good offensive moves, he's well-rounded and good at extending combos, where Mataro is brilliant for defense, zoning and arena movements. With the cameo system comes an entirely different roster to choose from, and for the most part these are phenomenally done as well. With your character selected, you can now put special inputs during the fight to bring the cameo fighter into play and to help you win your match. On paper, this is a fantastic idea, and within the story and single player game modes this is such fun. However, the cameo system in my eyes falls apart when you go online, as MK1 Gon has to be the sweatiest Mortal Kombat game to date. Everybody only plays the top meta picks for the top meta cameos, so most of the time you will only face the 5 same broken characters over and over again. And the reason for this is because certain cameos in the right hands are just absolutely broken. It's kind of hard for me to explain why casually without getting into the specifics of frame data and such, but to me it gives strong characters far too much power, and the balance never felt right because of this. If I'm facing a Johnny Cage who knows what he's doing with the right cameo, I will lose, and there's very little I can do about that. This may be a skill issue, of course, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the cameo system in the long run, even though it's great for the single player experience. And it's so easy for Mortal Kombat just to fix this. Just add a mode online that doesn't pick cameos. Instantly fix it and I would have so much fun again, but the cameo system absolutely makes me hate the online, which is unfortunately where 90% of the content lies for this game, as a bunch was totally stripped. Firstly, the crypt has been completely removed, now replaced with a single shrine that you just put some money into and claim a random prize. It's terrible. Outside of the standard ladder as well, the only other game mode that we have is the new Invasions mode. Played like a board game but with the mechanics of the challenge tower from MK9, the idea is you work from piece to piece, fighting enemies and locking the path ahead. Eventually you'll make it through many realms and fight the ultimate fight. Folks, again, I'm sorry to say that this is one of the worst game modes I've ever played, and it is so incredibly repetitive and boring. NetherRealm put a lot of eggs in this basket, claiming it to be an ever-changing collection of fun and rewards, and we got neither of those things. Alright, fair enough, we got some nice skins on a couple of palette swap costumes, but you unlock nothing of substance here, and it is not worth the time sink it takes to reach the final confrontations to get the stuff actually worth going for. All of the fights within Invasion mode are the same shade of boring as well. It just was not implemented well in my opinion, which leaves quite a lot of content lacking for this game, as other than the story, online and Invasion mode, that's it. Meaning once you beat the story and once you beat Invasion mode, all you have left is online. Oh, besides the towers of course. Speaking of towers, let's discuss the final boss of the game, which long story short is Shang Tsung and Quan Chi as the Deadly Alliance once again. Not only does this not feel earned in the slightest, but the fight itself isn't really much of a boss fight either, as once again they're just regular versions of themselves as you'd fight them in any other mode. So again, this time around, just another really weak entry in the final bosses for me, which is just a shame. I wish I could speak about some good things, but unfortunately we have to talk about the customization as well. Again, it's pathetic what we are given. Gone are all of the customization options that we had in the last game. So no more intro or victory animations, the characters themselves have been downgraded to a generic theme and a single cosmetic swap of choice that sometimes you can barely even see, and there are hardly any good alternative skins. The only skins that are good are the ones that you have to buy through the online shop, and they cost a sodding fortune. So again, not worth doing. Now honestly, I'm not blaming NetherRealm in the slightest for this. Warner Brothers, you should be totally ashamed of yourselves for how money hungry you are with this game. It has totally ruined the entire experience, as there is no content even after a year of its release. The exact same bugs and problems have been in the game for months and are still there, and this had the worst launch of any Mortal Kombat in history. And it is such a shame because on paper, this could have been the greatest Mortal Kombat of all time. They were so close. The recipe was perfect, and it really could have been the best that ever was. But Warner Bros. And their hungry sodding bellies took any chance this game had away and threw it in the bin for the sake of £20 fatality DLCs. Like, are you shitting me? Anyway. There are a hell of a lot of negatives about this game, but there are still some great aspects to it as well. Next, it is easily the most beautiful a Mortal Kombat game has ever looked. All of the characters are phenomenally designed, with most being my favourite looks out of the entire series. And the arena, holy smokes, the arenas this time around are beyond beautiful. So they really knocked it out of the park on a design level. Everything looks the best it ever has. And what of the fatalities and brutalities this time around? Well, again, they are fantastic without question. I'm so happy they at least got these right, but the fatalities are disgusting, gory, and clean as hell. Don't get me wrong, some of them are absolutely appalling, like both of General Shao's, but for the most part, killing your opponents is just as fun as before. And now it doesn't stop there, as animalities have also recently been released for the first time since Mortal Kombat 3. Now you may change into an animal and carve your opponents into pieces, and folks, these are one of the highlights of the game. games. They all look absolutely incredible. The animations are spectacular. The look, everything is literally perfect with these. They, to me, are so much better than the fatalities, and I choose to end with an animal every single time now. It really sucks to end on a note like this, but I think MK1 is the definition of wasted potential. This could have been the greatest Mortal Kombat we had ever had, but unfortunately Warner Brothers got in the way and ruined any shot it had at being a decent contender in the ranks. Now, I don't think it's a bad game, do not get me wrong. I still play this every now and again, and I'm more than willing to go back to it. However, as a full Mortal Kombat experience, I can't help but feel constantly ripped off by it. So even though on paper this could have been the greatest of all time, I personally am going to put it there, and I think I'm being generous. But, folks, there we go. That is it. And first and foremost, thank you all so much for watching. I have had an absolute blast creating this video. Now, admittedly, I wanted this video out so much sooner. However, I have been really ill recently, so that's why this has taken so long to create. And the next videos, they won't take as long, don't worry. But if you genuinely watched this from start to the end, I really hope you enjoyed it, and it means so much to me. It really does. Which is why I'm also so happy to say that I've already started working on the next every video, if that's what we're going to call them. But I am currently tackling the next series. But the third series, I'm leaving that up to you folks. So please let me know down in the comments below which series you would like me to play to its entirety. And in the future, I'll get a poll going with some of the most popular picks. So if you want me to play every entry in your favourite series, let me know. Let me know which one. And it also goes without saying, but if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I literally poured everything I could into this video, and I learned so much, which I cannot wait to keep showing off within the next videos. So if you did want to stick around, it would mean an awful lot. And if you're looking for more Mortal Kombat from myself, I can recommend 2 more videos on the 100% journey of MK11 and MK1. In those videos, I do an even deeper dive into the entire game and show you exactly what it takes to get from 0 to 100%. But I have rambled for far too long already. Just know that videos are going to be back and better than ever, I promise you. The next one I'm cooking up is going to be amazing. So I hope to see you in the next video, but until then folks, have a wonderful rest of your day, morning, evening, noon or night, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye for now.